Well, we're delighted to have with us today psychiatrist Dr. Karl Benzio, and he's the executive director and the founder of Lighthouse Network. And we have him with us today primarily because of the Alcohol Awareness Month. And he has with us today some very valuable information. So, Dr. Benzio, what a delight to have you, sir.
Hey, great. Thanks for being on the show there.
Yeah, where are you? Where are we Skyping you in from?
Just outside of Philadelphia, north of Philadelphia, next to New Jersey.
All right. Well, tell us about this week and some of the things that are going on about Alcohol Awareness Week.
Yeah, alcohol awareness. Wow. Alcohol, about 16% of our country have an alcohol abuse or addiction problem. It's the third leading cause of death in our society after heart disease and cancer. So it's so prevalent in our society, but it's often overlooked, and people are so embarrassed to talk about it or come out about their issues with it, that they suffer in shame and guilt so often, especially in the Christian community where it's even more difficult to talk about these kind of issues. So our country, as we've tried to educate people and help people understand and increase awareness of various different things. April is Alcohol Awareness Month, and all around the country there's various different activities to, whether it's screening, doing educational seminars and clinics and in hospitals and workshops, or whether it's in the schools and the DARE programs and different things that help educate kids to understand good decision making and how to steer clear from dangerous things like alcohol and drug use.
All right, tell us about the work with Lighthouse Network and how you get involved in this.
Yeah, Lighthouse Network is a nonprofit organization, started it in about 2005. And for me, I'm a recovering alcoholic myself. And as a psychiatrist, I've worked with a number of people over the years that have just really struggled with mental health and addiction issues. And our society, especially the Christian community, really has a hard time understanding some of these things, as there's a disease model and a way of looking at these things that our society has and my medical colleagues have that really doesn't infuse any spiritual aspects to it. So it was really an interest and a passion of mine to help really bring spiritual components into the treatment and understanding of addictions and mental health issues. And so Lighthouse Network has two services. One is our addiction and counseling helpline. So we take calls from all over the country, about 700 calls a month we take now. Wow. And we have our care guides, and they listen to the caller. Most of our care guides have been through these issues themselves, so they have compassion, they have love, they're able to pray with individuals, but they provide an incredible expertise in being able to answer questions. And our healthcare system is so convoluted and complicated that most people don't understand, that number on the back of their insurance card. What do I do? How do I access help for depression or suicidal feelings or alcohol or drug abuse? And so we just help them navigate the system. We guide them through life's storms so they can find, well, what are the best options for them treatment-wise. Our goal is to help them find Christian treatment, because the science shows that when we infuse Christian and faith-based principles into treatment, much better outcomes happen. So we really want to try to help that person navigate the system and find what is going to be the best Christian care for them. Well, the other thing we do is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing we do is we develop resources. So I write curriculum and for individuals to do in their home, or for facilities, treatment centers, to use in their facilities to help with addictions and mental health issues. And God's given me the gift to be able to infuse practical biblical principles into the treatment process to really help people understand how to take every thought captive, how to put on the armor of God, how to make that real practical in the everyday living so they can overcome some of these life-interfering behaviors and thoughts and emotions that they struggle with.
All right, let me get a couple of things out of this. First of all, I'm hearing you say that there is help, and that is a key to a component to what we're talking about here today. But I also heard you say that for the most part, Christians struggle with these issues, and it's embarrassing for them to come forward, and yet they're struggling with it. And I think where do we begin to break the ice, so to speak, so we can get people help who are addicted, and even though they're believers, they're addicted. It seems like that's an oxymoron, but they still need help.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, Perry. In our culture in churches oftentimes is we have a difficult time accepting people that are different, or accepting people that are really struggling. These are complex issues, addictions, but if we really break it down spiritually, we all have idols of the heart. We all have issues that we struggle with. We all have areas in our life where we go to something other than God and Jesus to meet our needs. So when you really break down the core of who we are, we all struggle with addictions. And to be able to one of the things I do is I help go into churches and ministries to help them develop a culture that's a lot more understanding and accepting of these, overt addiction issues, so that, most churches say that people matter to God and people matter to them, but oftentimes when a person gets into a church that has this kind of issue, they're ostracized or they're marginalized, or nobody really knows how to talk to them, or not quite sure, do I invite them over? Do I invite them over to hang out with my kids? I'm not quite sure what they've done in the past, what they might say, or what they might do, or even if I might say the wrong thing, because I don't really know how to deal with this kind of issue. I'm not a professional, so there's just a lot of trepidation and anxiety about the congregation has. And then from a Sunday school class or from the pulpit, how do we be able to acknowledge these kind of issues instead of making fun of them or making cracks about psychiatric medications, or that somebody's in counseling? Unfortunately, and from the pulpit, there's those kind of jokes sometimes. And for that person who's struggling, that either is in counseling or is trying to make that choice of how do I go and get some help for this, that really pushes them back and just heaps that a little bit more shame and a little bit more guilt, on top of them, and it just makes a huge burden for them to be able to go and access, the good Christian sound counseling that's available to them.
We'll take a break here in just a moment, Dr. Benzio, but before we do, what's so interesting to me is that all of a sudden, all the issues that we have once preached against are now sitting in the pew, and we're finding ourselves rethinking how we're approaching this. We want to certainly love them with God's love and grace, and yet there's that fine line of we really don't know how to reach out to them, or perhaps more importantly, we don't pick up the signs of addiction. And there they are sitting there. What are some of the signs, quickly, before we take a break, we should be looking for?
Well, certainly frequency is the biggest one. How often does somebody, drink? Obviously, if they're using any illicit drug, that's a problem. But alcohol, it's socially acceptable. It's, it's legal. But what is the frequency? Do they have withdrawal if they stop? Do they get headaches? Do they get shakes? Do they have trouble sleeping? Do they have GI upset? Do they need more to get that same buzz or that same feeling? And instead of having, 2 beers, do they need 4? 3 glasses of wine, do they need 5 or 6? And probably the biggest one is, when there's consequences, whether it's a DUI, whether it's marital issues, whether it's problems in distance in a relationship with their kids or other family members, work consequences, do they continue to use even in the face of consequences? And with so many times, there's so many warning flags that have come up in a person's life where somebody's held them accountable, somebody's, they've lost something, they've been impacted in a negative way by their drinking, but they still continue to use drinking as a way to soothe the discomfort from that consequence, as opposed to seeing it as the cause of that consequence.
Dr. Karl Benzio, he's a psychiatrist, and he's the executive director and the founder of Lighthouse Network. And this is Alcohol Awareness Month, along with other issues that we want to talk to him about, addictions. And by the way, the Lighthouse Network is really an incredible resource. And Dr. Benzio, what is that wonderful phone number that people can call?
Yeah, our addiction and counseling helpline is 877-562-2565 and www.lighthousenetwork.org. There are a lot of free resources there, a lot of videos, a lot of tips about addictions and mental health issues. But call our care guide if you have any questions. We'd love to be able to help you.
Well, and let me just encourage you, that is the start. That you have a caring, compassionate counselor on the other end, somebody as a trained professional to help you get started in a recovery that I'm sure that you've been praying about and seeking. What is the connection that you make with addiction and what happened at Virginia Tech and Columbine?
Well, yeah, this week is actually the anniversary. On Monday was the anniversary of the Virginia Tech shooting, and Friday, in a couple of days, will be the anniversary of the Columbine shooting. Both incredibly tragic events, and obviously, as a psychiatrist, I'm not going to try to diagnose the individuals, but we know there were some significant issues that were going on in the 2 in Columbine and the 1 in Virginia Tech in their life. There was some substance abuse and some mandated substance abuse treatment for the teenagers in Columbine. But what we really have is more, what are the core issues? What are the things that are going on inside that give a person struggle, pain, discomfort? Certainly as teenagers, it's a difficult time of life. There's a lot of change going on, peer relationships, trying to become independent, trying to manage life on our own, obviously with a lot of different stressors going on. We don't do a very good job in our society at teaching people how to deal with discomfort, how to deal with conflict, how to manage whenever those negative feelings occur. I know when I was a kid, I was taught if you're angry, if you're sad, if you're anxious, you're weak, you're a wuss, you can't handle it. So
Yeah.
people will take advantage of you. So I was taught as a guy, you got to really, push those down and cover those up. But those negative feelings we see in the Bible, that Jesus and God, they had a lot of those negative feelings, felt forsaken, felt abandoned. I mean, half the Old Testament, God is angry and jealous that, his people are going wayward. And so being able to work and understand those feelings as our warning system, we're not taught that well. So as kids grow up, they find different ways to either cover up those feelings, and then they eventually explode, or they find ways to anesthetize them. And drugs and alcohol in our society is a very, powerful and potent and easy access mechanism that certainly a lot of teens use to be able to cover up, anesthetize, escape, get rid of some of those negative feelings that they have a hard time dealing with.
Dr. Benzio, where does depression come into this?
Depression is, there's a lot of different ways to classify depression. There's certainly clinical depression, where somebody really has a hard time functioning,
Right.
whether it's a hard time getting out of bed or thinking clearly, leading to possible suicidal thoughts. But then there's all that sort of subclinical depression that we all have ups and downs in life. Again, our negative feelings are that warning system. So if I'm in the woods and I see a tiger, I should get a little depressed, anxious, fearful, worried. That's my warning system. Let me know, hey, there's potential danger here, life and death. I got to do something. Whenever we start to look at the feelings as the problem, that's usually when we really start to struggle. And great warning system, they're a terrible decision-making system. We start to make decisions with that depression, with that anger, with that anxiety. Usually we start to make more problems for ourselves, which then give us more warning signs of negative feelings, which lead to more problems if we use that to solve. So depression is usually one of the core elements that we struggle with dealing with, and then being able to anesthetize it or escape it or find thrill-seeking kind of ways.
Right.
These kids from Columbine, they were, playing some fantasy games to try to escape some of the depression and insecurities that they had, which led to just much more dangerous activities.
Stress. I mean, we're living in a culture that is just pressure. Or we're all living in a pressure cooker these days, and stress certainly can result in substance abuse.
Yeah, stress is, the classic analogy or metaphor is, a rock under extreme pressure can create a diamond.
Yeah.
And so, we all have stress in our life. We're in a fallen world. There's, so many difficulties or spiritual warfare all around us. But God is sovereign over those things. And so he allows those stresses or pressures to come into our life, to grow us, to draw us closer to him, to help us develop the mind of Christ. But so many times we have a hard time seeing things from a godly perspective. We end up seeing it more from a me perspective. And we try to solve it based on our own skills, our own abilities, or under our own power. And we're going to fail. Whenever we're getting all of our confidence just from us and our abilities. So that's where we really need to rely on that instruction from the Word, how to be able to take it in and understand it real practically. And on our website, we have a lot of great materials to help people understand how to take in those biblical instruction of take every thought captive, strip off the old man, clothe ourselves with the new. Those are great principles, but for me and 90% of the Christians I know, it's really hard for them to practically apply that in their daily marriage, parenting, money management, life management skills. So being able to really, manage stress, to see it as, wow, this is God's bringing this into my life to grow me, how to be able to embrace it, just like you would a homework assignment or a tough team that you have to play in a sport, and say, yeah, I'm ready to go after that for the championship.
Yeah.
When it happens to other people, we say, hey, embrace it. When it happens to us, we're like, hey, I don't want any part of it.
Right.
Let this cup pass from me and go to somebody else, to endure this.
All right. Before we run out of time, what would you say to a pastor or even a Christian that knows there's somebody in their congregation or in their church family that is suffering with an addiction, and they genuinely want to help? I mean, I don't know how you do this without running the risk of possibly interfering where they don't want you to interfere, but at the same time you want to help. You're the doctor here. Help me. What do I do to help somebody else?
Yeah, what you can certainly attitude is really important. So being able to, like you say, a lot of times we have that motivation of wanting to love, wanting to care, wanting to be God's tangible hands of love and compassion to a person. But whenever they start saying some things, or we see some sinful behavior or dysfunctional behavior, it's really hard for us to not become judgmental and start to judge the situation. And so really being prayerful about our attitude and preparing ourselves to really want to love the person, not be judgmental, and just help them understand, hey, I want to come alongside and and help you understand what's going on with your life. What are the decisions that you're making? What are your goals? Are your decisions helping you attain your goals? And if they're not, how can I come alongside you and help point you in some directions that help you, find the professional expertise and counseling and guidance or accountability that are going to be helpful to you in becoming a good decision maker so that you can really achieve the goals that you want to achieve. I mean, we all want to achieve our God-given potential, have joy and peace, but recognizing, wow, the methodology or the tactics or the strategy I'm using, it isn't coming to that. I'm not getting close to my goals. I'm getting farther away.
Right.
And for somebody to be able to say, hey, I just want to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah.
I just want to come alongside to help you do that. If I can do it, great. If we need to bring in some other expertise, how can I help you identify and bring in some other expertise so we can help you achieve your God-given potential and the goals that, you and God have for you?
Well, that's wonderful. And again, let me just encourage you to check out the Lighthouse Network. Again, that's lighthousenetwork.org. Is that correct?
Correct, exactly.
And that phone number, Dr. Benzio, for people to call.
Yes, 877-562-2565. And we take calls from all over the country, so no matter where you're listening. About 50% of our calls come from the person that's struggling, and about 50% come from a concerned loved one, either a parent, a spouse, a pastor, a discipler of somebody. So whether you or somebody is struggling, and it's 70% of people in our society have a direct relative that is struggling with this kind of issue. Call that number, 877-562-2565, and our care guides would love to come alongside and help find the help that person needs.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Benzio. Dr. Karl Benzio with us today, and he's the director and the founder of Lighthouse Network. Boy, it's a tremendous resource. Check out the website, lighthousenetwork.org. Give that phone number a call and get on your way to some help and care today. Dr. Benzio, thank you, my friend. God bless you. We'll have you back soon, I'm sure.
God bless, Perry. Thanks a lot.